Hello, this is the last part of the professional development on gifted goal writing done at the Delaware County IU on May 7th. We did not get to the last question. How do you translate PLEPs into goals? I believe we started this section, but really once you have your PLEPs designed, they should lead you to be able to answer one of these three questions. Does this child need enrichment within the grade level standards? Does this child need acceleration beyond the current grade level standards? Or does this child need a combination of both, either enrichment in grade level standards in one content area and acceleration in another, or even acceleration in a content area, and because their rate of acquisition and retention is so high, acceleration is not enough, they need acceleration and enrichment above grade level standards. Let me give you a visual to explain. If you look at this diagram, this area in the middle represents the assigned grade level content. Now this could also be course level content, whatever the student is expected to learn and demonstrate understanding and application of by the end of the school year. So for instance, let's say it's a 5th grade year. The student's in 5th grade. The teacher, according to Chapter 4, is responsible for delivering the grade 5 content. But Chapter 4 and Chapter 12 tell us that in general education, teachers are to be meeting the not only emotional but also developmental and intellectual needs of their students. The question is, how far does that reach go? I would contend that it's about 1 year above and 1 year below. In other words, if you have a student sitting in your 5th grade class who has some gaps in their knowledge, you need to know what they were supposed to have learned the year before in case you need to fill in some of those gaps through normal differentiation. The same holds true for the student who has already mastered certain grade level concepts or skills, and as a teacher you want to continue to move them forward. You need to know what is in the next year's worth of expectations so you know what direction to head them in. So by this diagram, really a teacher is responsible for not just their grade level standards or course level, but also the course or grade level prior to the year they teach and for the one above them. Beyond that, though, the question is, how much should a general ed teacher be responsible for? Well, first off, if the needs of the student fall within that 1 year above grade band, okay, looking at an identified gifted student, their needs for enrichment should be able to be met in the general ed setting. It's when you get a student who is far above the common or the current grade level when you need to start really looking at intensive acceleration. The reality is, though, most kids kind of fall somewhere in between, and so they may need a combination of enrichment and acceleration. Even if you think about it, the classroom teacher who's teaching at 5th grade, if they're moving that student beyond 5th grade expectations to 6th grade, to some degree that's still a form of acceleration. And so while we'd like to be able to draw these nice, neat lines and say anything from this point on is acceleration, anything below is enrichment, it's not that easy. It's based on where the student is intellectually compared to what is in the general ed curriculum and what the classroom teacher is prepared to provide. As we move into developing goals, we need to set some parameters. GIEP goals are supposed to be annual. If they are annual, they cannot drive the day-to-day instruction, so they must be broad. They should be aligned to grade level standards, whether it's the current grade level or beyond. We are not teaching students outside of the standards. It's aligned to them. There's got to be a connection. They need to be individualized because each child brings with them different life experiences, different levels of readiness that determine where that enrichment versus acceleration change takes place. And what drives the answer to that question is the information you've collected in the PLEPs, which cannot be just a teacher says. It needs to be based on evidence. It needs to have a comprehensive picture painted using formative, summative, benchmark, and diagnostic data. GIEP goals are not the day-to-day lesson plans. They are not generic. You shouldn't be able to look at a GIEP and see no change from year to year to the goal, because that tells me that the goal is for the program, not for the student. And when we see goals like that, they're very cookie cutter. They're very arbitrary. When we have vague goals that are repeated year after year, there's no accountability as to what's going on in the classroom, and sometimes what's going on in the classroom, in the gifted pull-out classroom, appears so disconnected from the standards that it looks like fluff. Goals should not be something a teacher does. They shouldn't be based on the teacher. And these are children. They are not able to sign themselves out until they are 18. And so the best person to suggest educational goals are the educators, and then to build that consensus with the parents. GIEP goals are not a menu of opportunities that kids can take advantage of if they want. Okay? The choice that is so important would be something that would be offered in the day-to-day lesson plans, but the goals themselves are not choice. We don't let students come to school and say, I think I'm going to study 5th grade today. Oh, no, no, no. We decide the overarching annual goal, and then the instruction, the curriculum instruction that supports it, that's where we can offer choice when appropriate. So, case in point, meet Matt. Matt is a current 7th grader. He has a strength and a passion in writing. It is March of his 7th grade year, so it's in the spring, and we are sitting down to plan for his 8th grade year. So what type of goal do we write if he's currently working at an 8th grade level in some of his writing skills? His conventions are fantastic, but the other parts of his writing are still a work in progress. You know, his use of language, his style, his voice. He earns good grades with very little effort, and he really enjoys all kinds of writing. So what kind of goal should we write for Matt? Well, we need to take a look at the expectations for 8th grade writing. I'm not going to take them to you now, but if you would like to stop this webinar, go to PDE SAS or go to the link in this PowerPoint. It will take you to the PA/ELA Common Core State Standards, and I would direct you to pages 15 to 30, which focus specifically on 8th grade expectations for writing. Using what the Common Core State Standards say are part of 8th grade expectations, I would write a goal for Matt that would look something like this. Given the opportunity to choose a topic, Matt will enrich and expand his writing to a proficient or higher level using criteria from the 8th grade level standards or as predetermined on a learning contract. That's the goal. I want to talk to you about the formula of the goal. You'll see at the top, condition, name, behavior, criteria. This is something special ed has kind of learned and we just haven't picked up on. But when creating a goal, a quality goal first has a condition. So the condition here is that, now remember, he's going into 8th grade. We're using 8th grade level expectations. So within that frame, that 8th grade level, he will have opportunities to write on a topic of his choice. He's going to write. He doesn't have a choice about writing, but what he writes about, he will have a choice on the topic. There's a very big difference between Matt will have opportunities to write. Okay, that's basically saying Matt can choose to write if he wants, or he can choose not to write. Well, here he's going to write. What he writes about will be a choice. So that's the condition. The name, well, we include the student in it. Then we need the behavior. Well, what he's going to do is to enrich and expand his writing to a proficient or higher level, which is our criteria. But proficient or higher isn't enough. Proficient or higher against what? Well, in this case, the criteria is proficient or higher using criteria from the 8th grade level standards or as predetermined on a learning contract. If you remember in the previous slide, his conventions are really solid. So maybe in a learning contract, we might start to push his technical aspect of his writing to a higher level while maintaining the stylistic expectations that go with 8th grade. As you look at this goal, is this an acceleration, an enrichment, or a combination goal? For the most part, this is really an enrichment goal, and I know that not necessarily because of looking at the goal, although he's going to be assigned to 8th grade, that should kind of be a, if he's going into 8th grade and his goal is an 8th grade goal, right there should be a clue that this is going to be mostly an enrichment placement. To get a better idea, though, I'm going to look at the short-term learning outcomes. Now, there is no clear-cut way to break the goals down. I tend to look at the standards to see how the standards break the goal down. So in this particular example, because he might have a choice of his topic sometime, but other times I may want him to write about what's in the class, what the class is writing about. I broke it into the types of writing, informative, explanatory, and narrative, which come right from the standards, but I also gave him the opportunity to create some of his own work. I still want to make sure that he is able to meet the expectations of 8th grade in each of those writing genres, but I also recognize the fact that this is a passion and a strength for him, and I want to give him an opportunity to take it further. So he's going to have some expectations written into this goal where he is going to have some independent projects. Let's look at the short-term learning outcome. First part, informative, explanatory, narrative. Now I could have broken this down into 3 short-term learning outcomes. I could have made 1 argument, 1 information explanatory text, and 1 narrative. I just decided to combine them. The criteria is that he will be proficient on a rubric. Now, not any rubric, not one that the teacher creates, but a rubric that is specifically aligned to 8th grade expectations. If you want to see what that rubric looks like, you can go to the PDE SAS website. I will make sure to load it. But that rubric is aligned to what the Common Core State Standards say the writing should go to, what skills they should demonstrate in each of those writing types. How am I going to assess Matt? Well, he'll have opportunities for self-assessment, which will not be graded, but there will be a summative assessment done by the gifted support teacher and general ed teacher. So in other words, he'll have opportunities formatively to have his writing edited and get feedback, but when it's time to summatively make the decision, did he gain the knowledge and skills that he needed? That summative assessment will be done in conjunction with the gifted and general ed teachers. And the percentage that he receives on that rubric will represent, or the percentage he'll receive at the end of this goal will represent the average of all summative assessments. Okay, so If he has a rough draft that he turns in, and that's the formative, and he receives feedback, there's no grade on it. The only time he's going to receive a grade is after he's had ample opportunity to edit his writing. Then he turns it in. Then there's a summative assessment. Now, there might be some times in the year where a teacher wants to take a look at, where are the students' skills, and so they may ask for a summative assessment at some point after they are assured that the students have been building and successful on the skills that they're going to measure. So it doesn't always, it could be a form of a test. It could be students could receive a piece of writing and asked to edit it, and their editing is what they grade. But only the summative assessments, which demonstrate achievement of the standards, will go into the grade. How often will this happen? He will have a writing assignment. He will have at least 2 summative assessments per marking period in English class. And because writing goes across all curricular areas, he will have 1 per marking period as part of another content area. So let's say in social studies, he has an opportunity to compact, or he has an assignment in social studies where he needs to write an essay of some sort. That could be used to demonstrate that he's maintaining the expectations of 8th grade writing, not just in English class, but also in another content area. The second part of this is the independent project piece, which is the publishing of something that he wants to publish. Now, again, proficient on an 8th grade rubric, right? Or on a rubric aligned to 8th grade expectations. And they will be aligned, but they may go beyond, because we know in the goal that if there's something in a learning contract that we want him to work towards, we can include that. Again, the same kind of assessment procedures. And the contract that he writes for this independent project will be evaluated regularly, at least once a month, in order to maintain progress. If Matt decides to write a book, he's not going to do that by the end of the first marking period. So it depends what kind of pieces he wants to publish will kind of drive how often will drive when the contract is due, but we will at least evaluate his progress on the contract once a month. How are we going to do this? How are we going to support this work in writing that Matt's going to do? Well, obviously one of the SDI is this independent or alternative writing assignment contract. I could have written this different ways. I could have just spelled out enrichment. I could have said enrichment in the form of independent or alternative writing assignments. But if you look at this, this is all 3 of these SDI support enrichment. So he's going to do independent writing contracts that will start within 3 weeks. Once he, when he can demonstrate that he gets the grade level concepts in a pre-assessment, then he can be off and running. When he doesn't demonstrate that he understands the grade level concepts, then he's just participating in class. Where will this happen? Well, location-wise, it could be in the general ed classroom, or it could be in the gifted support. It's really going to determine what the general ed class is doing while he's working on his writing and what kind of access he needs. You'll notice down here at the bottom I included technology. I'm not sure what kind of school this is. This may be a school that is a BYOT, and he might be able to bring technology with him, in which case I probably wouldn't write this SDI. But in a school district where they don't have BYOT or BYOD, bring your own device, he may need to have access in order to continue the writing process, and so we have to make sure that he's got a computer or a laptop or something along those lines. Okay. When he has these independent projects, we need to make sure that it's very clear what that project needs to include when he's completed. So the rubrics need to be given at the time the project is developed, and they should emphasize those good 21st century communication skills. Let's look at another goal. Same kid, Matt, okay? This time, however, you'll notice there's a change in the goal. Given a topic, Okay, so either this teacher's going to assign one, or he's going to have an opportunity to choose. See where I'm headed with this? There might be another opportunity for some independent project. Matt will develop his writing to a proficient or higher level. Okay, kind of still sounds like the first goal, except look at where the criteria changes. This time, he's going to use, the teacher is going to use criteria from the 9th and 10th grade level standards. Because now, Matt, a different scenario, as this time, Matt's present levels tell us he's already mastered 8th grade. He's already demonstrated that he can write all three of those types of genres using the correct conventions and the correct styles and the correct components that are already listed in the standards. So we need to move him to the next level. We need to move him to the 9th and 10th grade level. Now, the reason I put 2 grade levels is because when you get into the high school, now we look at it in terms of grade level bands. So it's 9th and 10th are together, and 11th and 12th are together. But my question for you is, what kind of goal is this? Is this acceleration, enrichment, or a combination of both? Because he's still in 7th grade and we're writing for the 8th grade year, it definitely looks like there's some sort of acceleration going on here, okay? Let's continue. Here is the short-term learning outcome, okay? Again, look, the 3 writing types. Proficient on a rubric to 10th grade expectations. Same kind of assessment procedures. We still have our minimum number per marking period, okay? However, what you don't see in here is the application in another content area, okay? So this goal is looking like, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty self-contained in the English classroom. And you'll see, not only did we include writing genres, but there's also a component for conventions. And instead of being proficient on a rubric, it looks like the objective criteria for this are 93% or better on accuracy based on summative assessments. So, you know, might be a quiz, or it might be some classwork that they're taking a look at, and that percentage will represent the average of the summative assessments. Is it still clear? It definitely looks like acceleration, but from just the goal and the short-term learning outcome, we're really not sure how that acceleration is going to play out until we look at the SDI. Matt is going to be advanced, but he's going to be given advanced placement in 9th grade English class. It starts the first day of school, once per day, location, basically in the general ed classroom. Gifted support teacher in this case really doesn't have a role in this process other than to make sure excuse me, the assessments and things are happening the way they need to be and are being collected and communicated to parents. This is what I would consider an acceleration goal that is based on a whole subject. So we are just moving Matt. He's not going to take 8th grade English next year. He's going to take 9th grade English, and he's just going to participate in that. Okay, so this is like, this is acceleration with no other specially designed instruction. I do want to just make one quick comment. I don't support this kind of goal, short-term learning outcome in SDI, from the standpoint of, oh, we're accelerating him. As a gifted support teacher, there's nothing I need to do anymore at all. You know, when we accelerate kids, they may still need support. Acceleration, when we look at what NAGC says about it, it really needs to be treated like a transition. Students need to have the opportunity to opt out of it. It should be a short-term trial period and supported by the adults. We shouldn't just throw kids into situations where they are accelerated and hope they swim. So I would expect in a GIEP that includes this goal, STLO, and SDI, that somewhere in support services there is mentoring or guidance counselor support, or even, you know, maybe weekly check-ins with the gifted support teacher during the first marking period, just to make sure the acceleration has moved smoothly, so that the student still feels supported. Let's look at one more. Acceleration, enrichment, or both. Given a topic or an opportunity to choose, Matt will develop his writing to a proficient or higher level using criteria from 9th and 10th grade level standards. Well, wait a minute. This looks exactly like the goal we just wrote. So it's acceleration, right? Well, let's look at it. When you look at the short-term learning outcomes, we still have the same type of writing genres. We still have the adherence to the conventions. In fact, this is still all pretty much the same, except, oh, wait a minute. There's a component where he's going to be using his writing in other content areas. So it's going to go beyond just the English class. It's starting to sound like a combination of both, right? Writing in the English class, but also consider the fact that social studies and science are also going to be included in this short-term learning outcome whenever there's opportunities for research-based writing assignments. You know, one of the huge shifts in Common Core is the ability for students to look at multiple resources, multiple non-fiction resources, and to assimilate, synthesize, and communicate the information that's in those resources. So this really becomes an acceleration / enrichment goal. And when we look at the SDI, what's Matt's class going to look like? Well, he's receiving acceleration, but he's also getting direct instruction in above grade level skills. This scenario does not move Matt in 8th grade to a 9th grade class. In fact, this goal and SDI was written with this scenario in mind of Matt's in 8th grade. He can't access the high school English, so he'll be in the 8th grade for his one accelerated class. So the gifted support teacher is really going to have a bigger role in supporting Matt, because we can't assume that just because he's sitting in an 8th grade class, he knows what the 9th grade expectations are. He's going to need, at the start of each unit for 9th grade, to do some pre-testing to determine if he needs that direct instruction in those above grade level skills. That's going to happen in collaboration between the general ed and gifted support teacher, and should be ongoing throughout the year, because the goal is by the end of 8th grade he will have mastered 9th grade skills. Now here is where I don't have all the right answers for you at this time, because we're still kind of feeling our way through this process. I don't know how far into 9th, and because Common Core is written as a grade band, he may have this goal for 2 years, unless he can demonstrate that he has mastered all of the 9th and 10th grade literacy expectations. Once he gets that direct instruction in above grade level skills, his tasks are going to be a combination of acceleration, because it's against 9th and 10th grade level standards, and enrichment, where we're going to provide for him some alternative rubrics to what the 8th grade students are getting, and he may have choice, or we may give him topics that he needs to write about, and everything will be stipulated in Matt's contract. You can see that this SDI is definitely going to require the collaboration of a gifted support teacher and the English teacher in order to keep things moving forward. And actually not just the English teacher, because as mentioned earlier in the STLO, this could manifest itself in science and social studies. So that is really, now it's time for you to kind of start writing your own GIEPs. And if you remember when we were together, I gave you that that reflection sheet that I want, the guiding questions on the GIEP, I want you to start there with your GIEPs. You can't write the goal unless you've made the case for what grade level and strength the child has. Once you do that, the goal itself is actually very easy. You just need to look to the standards. The one last question that I do want to address is, how far ahead of a goal do you think we should set? So if, in Matt's case, if he is only working at 7th grade, and if he's in 7th grade and working at an 8th grade level in some things and not others, when we set our goal by the end of the next IEP for him to reach 8th grade expectations, is that enough of a goal? Well, if you remember the very beginning of this presentation, I shared with you what the state minimum requires. And that is, for 1 year in school, students grow 1 year. I think when we set our goals, we have to keep that in mind. If we want to set goals that are more aggressive than a year's worth of growth, I would just say make sure that in your short-term learning outcomes and your SDI, that you are addressing how that will happen. If you've got a 3rd grade student that you want to advance 2 years so that by the end of 4th grade they're ready for 6th grade work, that's called telescoping. Use that language in your SDI so everybody knows, hey, we're working at a faster pace, this is how we're going to do it, this is what our requirements are. Spell it out in the SDI. The SDI is the process. What is different for this child? What's going to be done differently that we wouldn't normally do for other students? Okay, so that's where, the real meat of the GIEP comes. I think the goals are often, we tend to think too hard about them. Keep that CNBC in your sights. The condition. What's the condition on which the instruction is going to be delivered? Who's the student? That's the name. What's the behavior? What is the student going to do, and what level is the student going to be expected to do it to? Yes, when you read that goal for Matt and it says proficient to 8th grade level standards, it doesn't spell all of that out, but you sitting in a GIEP meeting should be able to pull out the 8th grade standards and say to the parents, here, when I say proficient to a proficient level on 8th grade level standards, this is what's driving everything. You should be able to share that with parents. You don't have to include all of that in your GIEP, but you reference it so everybody knows where they can find the information. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email, tmoret@caiu.org, or you can give me a call, 732-8400, extension 8113. My area code is 717. That information is on the front of the PowerPoint. Good luck during this GIEP writing season.